Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Connect Conversations. Today's conversation is all about expectations, engagement, essential, and execution. And it's brought to you as a part of Mobius Connect's ongoing YouTube series, Connect Conversations. I'm Kim Fugger, the manager of Mobius Connect, and I will be the moderator for today's session. First, I'd like to take a moment to introduce our hosts of Connect Conversations, global reliability improvement experts, Ron Moore and Gary Tyne. Hi, guys. And we may have Andrew Fraser here joining us, just a few moments lagging with some connectivity issues. And before I officially pass the microphone over to you guys, I just want to encourage everybody here today, if you have any questions for Ron and Gary, please submit them in the chat box and they will stop to answer your questions live on air today. Again, your questions will be answered and aired anonymously, so no need to worry about getting called out directly. Ron and Gary are here to provide their advice and perspectives from their experiences, and they are here to help you. All right, guys, I'm going to pass it over to you now.
All right, thank you. And thanks to everybody out there who's come to, listen to us go on a bit about execution, engagement, expectations, those kinds of things. So that's the topic for today. I want to make just a few introductory comments, and then we'll, Gary and I will bandy it back and forth, and hopefully Andrew will resolve his connectivity issues and be able to join us. But anyways, for a long time now, I've said that there are some critical elements to having an effective reliability or operational excellence program. And those, at least in my mind, are executive sponsorship. And that's more than just permission. That's active engagement in the reliability OpEx process. In effect, setting expectations, engaging folks, and creating the right model for execution. And then along with that, there has to be a really good production and maintenance partnership. And even beyond that, there has to be collaboration amongst the design, procurement, operations, and maintenance people to eliminate the defects or solve the problems that are, creating loss of function and extra cost. And then the last element is having shop floor engagement. One of my mantras is nothing will change until the shop floor does things differently as in better. So, but today I thought we'd take that just a step or two farther and talk a bit about maybe an extension of those principles, and talk a bit about expectations, setting the right expectations. I heard someone once say, "Hi, Andrew's with us." Hey, mate.
Hi. Apologies for problems getting in then.
That's all right. We accept your apology.
Thank you.
So, anyways, expectations. In fact, Andrew and I were at the same conference, and a VP for a big company said the lowest standard you set is the highest standard you can expect. Now, think about the implications of that. If you set really low standards, sorry, the lowest standard you set is the highest standard you can expect. So that means all those low standards really need to be set fairly high, but achievable. And then the next part of that is execution. You can't just set the expectation. You have to have really good execution. And folks have to understand the expectations. They have to have the skills, which means you may need to provide training, procedure standards, and so on. And then finally, of course, is this engagement process where you have maybe small improvement teams, or you have a process to get the ideas from the folks doing the work about how to improve the work. So I'll pause there, and Gary, I'll bounce it over you or Andrew if jump in, and any comments you might have on those kind of high level things I just mentioned.
Yeah, I mean, some of the points that you've just made there on, you know, having that executive sponsorship and having the right model in place. Something, yeah, I see that as a critical element, really. You know, having been, you know, at the shop floor level and being part of some manufacturing improvement teams in the past, you know, without that leadership, without that executive sponsorship and that leadership, you know, you really are pushing what I've always described it as a wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow that you're trying to push uphill, and that wheelbarrow starts getting heavier and heavier without that sponsorship. So yeah, I just think that is absolutely a valid point, and having that right business model in place to deliver the improvements that are often needed. So yeah, I like that introduction.
Andrew, any comments on executive sponsorship before we get down to the, you know, expectations and so on?
Yeah, I think, and just echoing what's been said already, I think you can make some level of improvement, maybe without too much executive support, but if you really want to transform your performance and reach the high levels of reliability that your equipment is capable of achieving, it's a must. I think I would say as well, the executive engagement. It's not just a case of having a really good vision of where we want to go and communicating that vision, engaging people. That the executives need to be, the way I can describe it, at least knee deep in the process of trying to help deliver the change. It's not a standoff thing. This, and executives need to really understand, as well as having the vision, they really need to understand the reality on the ground as it is at the moment. But not only that, they need to understand why things are the way they are today. And, you know, how people may well have been conditioned by previous leadership into behaving a certain way. And that is just automatic behavior that they have. So it's really about having enough involvement in the change process to be able to dig deep and understand the real root causes of why you are the way you are today, and then take action to bring about change in people's engagement in the process.
Yeah, one of the models I use is, you know, executives relative to reliability and operational excellence. Executives need to be as involved as they would be in a safety incident, because I think most of them are fairly involved, not just involved, but highly participative. If you have, you know, a lost time injury or a major injury or a death, I mean, they get super involved with those things. And so the model I would suggest is you should be as involved in the reliability OpEx effort as you are in safety. And if you can take that, I think you know, you'll have a much better have much better guidance and understanding of the level of participation. And the second comment I'd make for you is that I've seen executives assign somebody, you know, Andrew, you're my VP of reliability now, go make it happen. But then they just sort of say, well, I've checked that box and walk away. And I don't mean that literally, but they're not particularly active in the implementation. And after a while, Andrew gets tired of not making any progress because the people at the plants aren't particularly responsive. And he says, I quit. You know, he goes and does something else. And I've seen that. Actually, I've seen that 2 or 3 times of folks actually just say, look, you're not supporting me. I'm not making any progress. I quit. And they may not quit the company, but they quit the job and go do something where they feel more fulfilled, more productive, that sort of thing. Any additional comments on that, guys? There being none, I'll proceed. Go ahead, Andrew.
That's good, Ron.
Okay.
Andrew.
Yeah, I was just, I'm not sure if we're going to have time to talk about this a little bit later on, but I was watching a documentary a couple of weeks ago. It's been broadcast in the UK, and it was about the assassination of the Swedish Prime Minister in 1996, I think it was. And there's been all sorts of, no one's actually been ever held to account for what actually happened. But during, one of the theories was it was maybe something to do with the apartheid situation and the government there, etc. But what they did during the documentary was they interviewed several still living people that were involved in the ANC during those years, and it was and there were some of them were, you know, high up leaders, but a lot of them were activists, just frontline activists, and it just brought. And I quite often think of that in terms of trying to bring about a change in reliability, performance, and culture. They were involved in a struggle, and it took people at all different levels of the organization being committed to that struggle and playing their role to bring it about. And I think there's a similar, to me, there's a similar kind of tension and challenge associated with the reliability struggle, the reliability journey. If it was easy, it would have been, you know, we wouldn't be talking here. But there's something it's quite countercultural that's we're trying to bring about, and it is a struggle, and people at all different levels in all different departments in an organization that can either directly or indirectly influence asset performance and reliability need to be involved in that struggle. And that's why it's key that the executive leadership play their part.
Hopefully in the case of reliability, nobody gets killed. So yeah, and the next element, and it goes to the other issues around expectations and execution engagement, is having this production maintenance partnership. In fact, like I said earlier, there has to be collaboration and, you know, so-called teamwork amongst the various functional elements that put the higher level goals of the business success sometimes over their own departmental success, because that's the greater good for the business as a whole. And, you know, all those task interdependencies kind of mandate that collaborative, you know, team-based relationship, partnership, by whatever name you want to call it. And then, you know, so that has to be given, you know, some attention. Now, and we're going to come back to the shop floor engagement. Let's talk about expectations. You guys have some examples of expectations that you might share with folks? Maybe I hope I haven't caught you off guard.
No,
well,
go on.
you know, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, some of the expectations, you know, if we're talking from a reliability and operational excellence perspective, I mean, for me, there is an expectation that you will have cross-functional support across the different teams, you know, starting with that executive leadership, down to the shop floor. And I've seen some good examples where the Japanese, I think it comes from the Japanese philosophy of, you know, that leader standard work, you know, where you've got tiered approaches to different types of problems, and you've set some standards, and the walk, the Gemba walk is being performed, so that there are certain expectations within that reliability stroke operational excellence program, that there is, yeah, it is a cross-functional team effort. And I liked the way Andrew talked about it being the reliability struggle. You know, I've been struggling since 1996, you know, with that journey, you know, and now helping other companies on their own journey and trying to iron out some of those problems that I've experienced in the past. And I've used your help as well, both yourself, Ron, and Andrew, with companies that I've worked with in the past. But yeah, I just think those expectations are, yeah, it is a cross-functional effort. Everybody's got to be involved.
I think the expectations also get set when you set the example. And let me just share some personal example. Back in my days as president of that company, I would tell people, I expect you to work hard. I expect you to do a good job. I also expect that you'll make mistakes, and that's okay. If you're trying to do a good job, the question is, what did you learn? What can you do differently? What can you do better? Try to both set a high expectation and give them the freedom to make mistakes around those. And other things, since then, since I've been working with manufacturers, I would say, for example, I expect you to align and balance every machine to a high standard. Now, if you need training and tools to do that, you got to tell me and we'll work on that. Or I expect you to start up the process per the standard. Now, if the standard's not clear, then we need to work on that. I expect that the project guys are going to interface with production and maintenance to make sure that it's designed for reliability. And, saying that amongst the group and then repeating it and then, complaining or challenging somebody who hasn't met that expectation really sets the example for how they can do better. Andrew, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, nothing much. Just if we, the Deming quote about your system's perfectly designed to give you the results that you get, and setting your expectations as part of that. If we don't change our expectations of and redefine what normal needs to be, then we just continue to get the same results as we've always got. So I think it's important, but it's also important as well in setting those expectations. It's not about then beating people up for not achieving those expectations. I think, as you said, we need to provide people the skills and the training and the systems to be able to meet those expectations.
Yeah, and that goes to the issue of execution, which is kind of the next in the queue. The execution, I can say all those things. I expect you to align and balance the machine, but if I don't give you the tools, and if I don't put the right standards in place and get folks involved in the training and the use of those tools, then the execution can't possibly succeed if I don't follow through as a so-called leader and make sure that happens. So execution doesn't happen just because I set an expectation. It happens because I follow through with appropriate level of support, giving people the time, tools, training, and so on to actually execute on what I'm expecting. So Gary, do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, just an execution point of view, I think people need to understand, first of all, why they're being expected to deliver what's required. And I think sometimes that why are we doing this isn't always clear to the teams involved. So yeah, expectations and execution. Yeah, we need to know why are we being expected to execute this, and that has to be clear up front. And once we've got that in place, I know we need to train people with specific skills, and there needs to be a knowledge transfer. But I'm seeing more a more need for rather than just having training in place to execute. I think we're moving towards more of a coaching environment as well, where we're not just training people to deliver a certain skill, but we're actually coaching people on that journey, and we're applying more of a listening and asking questions attitude rather than just training people in a certain skill. That's what I'm seeing from an execution point of view.
And just to confess my own shortcoming here, I didn't always talk about why. To me, it was obvious, right?
Yes.
But my background maybe is a little different from everybody else. So I think you make a really good point in telling folks why. if you maybe, you know, cut the, just as a mechanical engineer, if you cut the unbalance in half, you increase the life of the equipment by, you know, some exponential of that. I think it's like 8 times, you know, it's 2 to the 3rd power, I think. And I don't, but whatever it is, right, it's going to be really good. And so you get better production, lower costs, and so on. So that, I think that why part is important, and it's something I've not always done, just in my own assumption about people understanding already why. You know, I'm just
Yeah.
encouraging them to do it. You know, Andrew, any comments on any of that?
Yeah, well, just to add, maybe just a slightly different angle. I think, I mean, one of the expectations, for instance, that for reliability that I hear some of the more progressive plants and companies talking about is aiming for, you know, for every task is done the right way every time, for example. And that's a really, people talk about that in terms of like operational discipline, but it's a really, really good standard to set in terms of expectations. But aligned to that in terms of, you know, senior managers' role is being close enough to understand what is actually in the way of people being able to do that. As an example, you know, what are the blockers in people's way to be able to do each task the right way every time. And I think another key role in here as well is making it easy or easier for people to do the right thing. As we know, not many people come to work to screw up every day, but when it comes to reliability, there's so many things got to go right for reliability to happen, and not many of them need to go wrong for reliability not to happen. So this key leadership process of knowing what's in the way and taking action to remove the obstacles in people's way and making it easy for people to do the right thing and delivering the execution.
Or on the reverse side, making it hard for them to do the wrong thing. You know?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that might be more difficult than the other one. And in fact, you know, most people will follow the path of least resistance to get a particular task done. So I think, you know, your point's well made about making it easy for them to do the right thing, follow the path of least resistance to what, you know, what's right.
yeah. Just for example, just on that last one there, I've got one client at the moment who's one of the directors is really passionate about, you know, very rarely should we break the weekly maintenance schedule. They have a habit of breaking it at the moment. And one way of doing that is to get his authority before you actually break it. You know what I mean? And it's, you know, people will think twice about having to go up the chain of command because they know that the senior guy will ask the question, why did we not foresee this happening in the first place? So there are changes in processes that can help that to have people do the right thing.
Yeah. Well, we're kind of related to that, and is, you know, I believe, and this is consistent with, you know, in fact, I learned this from Doc Palmer, is that you should schedule 100% of the available hours every week to do maintenance. But there's a real important but, allow for breaks to the schedule. And, you know, 100% is more often than not, far more often than not, probably not going to be achievable. But when you do that, when you schedule 100% of the available hours, you actually have more discipline in your workforce and you get more work done. And, you know, if you allow breaks to the schedule, you make better decision about what actually constitutes a break, makes a break necessary to your schedule. And it kind of relates to what Andrew just said. You just make better decisions and you get more work done when you do that. And just holding stuff in reserve because it's always been that way, well, that's not going to change the paradigm for how people operate. So anyways, that's my you know, 2 cents worth on that particular issue. Gary, you got anything to add to that?
I think that that approach is definitely something that organisations should consider, you know, and having that structure in place. One of the things having that documented. I don't know if we're talking about an engineering strategy or a policy. So we've got all of the activities documented and everybody knows what they're working towards, and even business process maps is another tool to help organizations put the right structures in place and people understand what their roles and responsibilities are. So if you've got a business process map for reliability execution, that's another a good way of documenting it.
One other comment here too is this, the 100% should be an aspirational goal. It's like zero harm or zero injuries, right? You may never achieve it, but if folks are getting better, say they've gone from 70 to 75%, great, wonderful. You guys did a super job. What can we do next? And if they get to 90%, man, that's fantastic. 100% is an aspirational goal. We should use it as a means to improve our productivity, improve our communication and all that sort of thing, as opposed to, well, we only got 98%. You got screwed up. That's not the point of this. Not at all the point of this. The point is to set high standards, high expectations, and execute well. And then if you do a little better, then you tell people how good they're doing, how well they've met your expectations in achieving that. So now, any others before we go on to engagement?
Not from me.
Okay. All right. Very good. Well, let's talk about engagement, which I think is, it goes really well with the other two, and it is essential, engage in the shop floor. And so how do we engage the shop floor? Well, I think Gary or Andrew, one of you guys alluded to it earlier. We go talk to the guys doing the work.
Yeah.
About what the issues are, and we engage them in coming up with solutions, or we engage each other in how to help each other come up with solutions to those issues. I think you go into Gemba, isn't that? I don't know if you use that phrase, but that's that's the Japanese phrase for go to the workplace and talk to folks doing the work. And of course, another one that I know Andrew and I have used is setting up small improvement teams to resolve issues, to restore a particular piece of equipment to like new condition, like new performance. And maybe another one is making sure they have the proper skills and training. And as important as actually giving them training is to make sure they use what they've just learned as soon as they return to the workforce. See, training has a half-life of about a week, so a month later, if you wait for a month, what's left? Not much. So anyways, that'll be my nickel's worth. You guys can maybe give some examples of that,
For me, Ron, engagement is about making sure that you've got the right people engaged. I see too often reliability initiatives or reliability excellence programs just involving the engineers and the maintenance teams. I wrote a paper a number of years ago called "Listen to Your Operators," and I think sometimes we ignore the operators, the people who are out there at the plant every day, listening, touching, feeling, watching the equipment running. They are the first port of call. And I think for me, engagement is about engaging everybody, not just a certain select few or a certain department. It has to be a cross-functional team that you pull together.
I have a phrase, nothing changes until the shop floor does things differently.
Yeah.
You and I can come up with a grand plan using RCM or Six Sigma or whatever, but until the guy doing the work does it better, all that is for naught. It's just wasted energy. and you think you're doing things and you're not doing things until the shop floor does them. Yeah, Andrew.
Yeah, just to give you an example of, I think of this working in practice. One of the change projects we were working on, you remember this, Ron, we had the executive buy-in right from the very beginning, an engineering director and the manufacturing director who were sort of joined at the hip in wanting for this to happen. And they chose one of the a critical plant on the site, but it hadn't been treated as a critical plant for many years, and it was in very poor condition and very poor systems, and the people hadn't been loved and all that sort of stuff. So they were certainly had a direct involvement. And one of the things that we asked them is, what commitment are you prepared to give to this process? And they said, well, you need to tell us what we need to give, but at the very least, we'll turn up in this plant, both of us together, for half a day a month, every month as required. And that was a huge commitment given their level of responsibility they had. And one of the things that they did, we had a steering team meeting involving them, and everybody else was involved in the change project. But one of the things we also did during that time was they went on a tour of the plant. And it was usually the senior operator who would organize the tour, but the senior operator on the day didn't realize this meeting was happening. And so he said to the senior guys, what do you want to do? Do you want to go and look at some good stuff, or do you want to go and look at some bad stuff? To which they said, both. So we went to look at some good stuff first, things that were progressing, where some of the operators have been got involved in cross-functional teams and have been doing some really good job at that. And then took them to look at the bad stuff. And the bad stuff was a compressor station at a remote part of the site where there was a duty compressor and there was a standby compressor. And the senior operator said that standby compressor has not been in standby condition for 18 months. And it was designed as a critical part of the process. And that wasn't on their radar, and they were unaware of that. And so there was a huge vulnerability there that this senior operator was drawing attention to in a very constructive way. So the senior guys formed a reliability improvement team. The thought was it would take maybe 6 weeks or so to address all the issues. And by the way, the main compressor had oil leaks. It had a hose, steam was being sucked in through the motor and all that. So it was in terrible condition. They thought it would take about 6 weeks for this team to deliver. In the end, it took them about 6 months because a lot of the knowledge had left the organization as to what the problems were with this particular compressor. So who provided the leadership for that? Well, I think it was the directors, but it was also, and most importantly, it was a senior operator, you know, who had the guts, the courage to see himself as an equal to the directors in this process, which is again another example of what I said earlier about jointly everybody has a role to play in the struggle, because that would not have happened had he not been prepared to have that discussion with those guys. So
yeah, just a couple other minor comments here, Andrew. As I recall, that particular area was somewhat of a dumping ground. Is that the one I'm remembering?
Yeah, you've probably seen a few dumping grounds around, Ron. I think.
Yeah. People would. It was like being in the old Soviet Union, and if you messed up, they would send you to Siberia. Well, this area was kind of like Siberia.
No, that is absolutely true. And to be honest, what happened was employees who were perceived as being problem employees because of their behaviors or whatever it was, they tended to find their careers on this plant, right, including managers. Right, so you're talking about a concoction of all sorts of difficulties that had to be addressed, not just the plant condition, but the people condition. And eventually, actually, there was one particular manager who, unfortunately, was found and proved themselves to be quite toxic. And although they were nodding their heads about wanting to be involved in supporting this project, what they were doing outside of meetings was the complete opposite. And it was the other people around them that were telling everybody else, this is the reality of what's actually happening. So some of these, that's why executive leadership, another reason why you really need to be involved, because you find the root cause of issues in really unexpected places.
And And, most of these people in this area were good people. They were frustrated. They were irritated. They needed an outlet for all that energy to be properly focused and making the plant right. And, the fact that they were sent to Siberia is, maybe it's a good thing in the sense that they were frustrated and they were, kind of moved out of the way, when in fact, what they really wanted was somebody to pay attention so they could do a good job. And we found that to be very, what initially challenging, but very rewarding in the end, I think. Is that a fair assessment, Andrew?
I think, and it's one of the things I point out to clients. So at the beginning of this process, you think about who some of your awkward people are at the moment that you know about. And the reason they're awkward may be because they're just totally frustrated and have known what the right thing is to do. It's like the word for me, the word vision and frustration, it's the same word, only spelled differently. You talk to leaders, I ask them about their vision and they tell me this is where we want to get to, this is where we are. Go to guys on the front line and ask, well, what frustrates you about the work? And they tell me the same thing. Here's where we are and this is where it should be like. And a lot of the people who are frustrated can be the ones who really become the genuine leaders for this process. And if you get them involved and they lead it, they will maintain it. You don't need that many audit processes because they have created the new standard. And, they themselves are setting and maintaining the expectations for what's required.
The only other comment was about compressors. And Gary, you may recall this. I think it was there where we were walking about, and this compressor was just sad looking.
Yeah.
You don't,
And I
you,
think
you,
it may
you don't you don't remember that guy, do you? You don't remember that, no.
I do.
And so my question was, how does that make you feel? And it was in retrospect, it was a pleasant moment, but I'm sure it was a really difficult moment for you at that moment.
Oh, that's
So,
right. Wow.
so
It's-
anyways,
just the
comment,
other,
Gary.
just one thing on engagement as well is when we've worked on reliability improvement projects and reliability operational excellence projects in the past, sometimes the shop floor, I know Andrew talked about frustration, but sometimes there's also a level of exhaustion where they've tried to do this once before in the past or twice before, and it was the flavor of the month 10 years ago, and it didn't work then, and we're going through the whole same process again. Why is it going to be any different this time? Why should I get involved? And sometimes you've got that negativity that's come from an historical attempt at trying to improve the facility, and it's about trying to you wanted to take people on that journey, but sometimes people just really don't want to go on the journey because they've had their fingers burnt in the past, and what they've done previously hasn't been sustained. So it's that sustainability, I think, as we move forward on any reliability excellence or operational excellence journey, it's making sure that we've got some level of sustainability in place to make sure that this becomes part of the culture, and that we have to be able to manage that process very effectively. Otherwise, it will fail.
Yeah. Well, Margaret Wheatley wrote a book. I don't remember what the name of it was now, The New Leadership Science or Principle or some such thing. But one of the things she said in that book that struck me is people own what they create.
Yeah.
So it's up to managers, executives to set the right expectations, right? To make sure they can execute well on those expectations, and have them engaged in owning what they create, because the right standards, expectations, execution capability has been created by the leadership of the organization. And How do you get ownership? Well, people own what they create. So there has to be a process for engaging people in creating the solutions to the problems. And, the leverage, just for instance, imagine you have 500 people at an operation and you're doing RCM and maybe you're doing Six Sigma or whatever, right? And that typically involves about, at most 5% of the workforce. Well, what's the other 95% doing? And so involving the 95% and doing all the little things well and engaging them in creating the solutions that gives them a sense of purpose and ownership and control is really, way up there in the queue in terms of getting these processes in place and getting them in a sustainable mode. So that's okay. That's my nickel's worth. I'll pause there. Any other comments, guys?
Well, just related to that, Ron, I think there can also be call it a culture where it's engineers that are expected to make the changes, and everything tends to get funneled up to engineers, and in some cases, some engineers don't like to relinquish the control of that process and feel that they're trying. And a lot of engineers, I can't myself in this as well as an engineer. We're often when I try to do this, it's almost like trying to find the perfect solution to the problem. Whereas, if you can involve an awful lot more people, and even if they come up with like an 80% solution to the problem, well, if you're 20 people doing that, that's an awful lot more improvement is done rather than just going through an engineer. So I think there is a challenge there now we're not talking about doing things that's going to undermine process safety or anything like that. We've got to have set boundaries around about that. But, to review if you have an operation that's been run differently from one shift to another, involving the operators and defining how each shift is actually doing to the moment and facilitating a session to come up with the standard way to do that, and then proving that standard by everybody running that way, that doesn't need a lot of engineering input for that type of solution. And there are a lot of examples like that some organizations, I think, constrain their improvement activity by not involving people and giving them that opportunity.
And you can get some of your best ideas from the shop floor because they have to deal with it so much. And a lot of them are fairly creative. Just, just a little one story, a true story. This company was underfilling some of the boxes they were shipping out. In fact, a lot of times they would ship an empty box, right? So they called in engineering to come up with a solution. So engineering, created this maybe, I don't remember now, it was an X-ray process, a weigh belt, and, went through all this, engineering and came up with like $1 million solution. And they went out to the line, finally went out to the line, and the problem was solved. The operator just put a fan near, where he was operating. And if the box was empty, the fan just blew the box off. So, sometimes the most innovative solutions can be really simple and easy and cheap and so on and so forth. So rather than spend $1 million, they just left the fan in place. And of course, you got to go back and find out why it's not filling the boxes. But short term, that was a really innovative, easy solution.
It's like the problem
Anyway,
it's like the problem of pens not working on the moon or up in space. Take a pencil then, rather than engineering a pen that's going to work.
Well, they spent $1 million engineering a pen that would work when they could have taken a pencil. So, all right. So what do we got? Yeah. Any other comments, guys?
Not from me.
No, that's been very good, Ron. Thank you.
Okay. All right, guys. Let's see. Next time we've got the myths and pitfalls of what?
Planning.
Gotta look. Planning and scheduling. Yeah, we're going to talk about the next time. And so hopefully some of you folks will join us again. The myths and pitfalls of planning and scheduling. So, Kim, are you out there?
I am. Well, thank you guys so much for another great conversation. And as Ron said, on the 27th of February, we will be back with myths and pitfalls of planning and scheduling. So we hope you can join us then. You can find the link to register on Reliability Connect or check out our social media at Mobius Connect to get the link. Again, episodes normally air every other Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you are interested in engaging with other industry professionals or would like to participate in the industry's live feed and forums on Mobius Connect, go to mobiusconnect.com. Thanks again for joining us. Have a great day. Please stay safe, and we will see you all next time.